So I was going to show my Seismic Bleed video and Seismic Bleed build in this video too, but I decided not, because when I was doing it, I was in the middle of filming me, destroying through Frontline Expedition like I usually do. And I mean, I've known this build. I've used it countless times and not died many times doing exactly what all my builds do. But for the first time ever, and I mean ever, I actually died inexplicably in Frontline when you get to the second area. And as usual on all of my builds and all of my classes, I charge headlong into the hailstorm of breacher bullets, at the same time shooting you, the 5, 6, 7 captain shooting you, casting freeze, or who knows what else on you. And of course a million riflemen too, just going straight in there, and all the melee people going in there. You've seen me on countless videos doing that. And for the first time, I actually died. I couldn't believe it when it happened. And by the way, I did have bleed on I think at least one dude, as well as activated my skills at that point, which gave me even more armor and resistance, and yet I died. And the best way I could see it was that all the breachers, the shotgun dudes, I think a bunch of them must have shot me once at the same time. It was very soon after I got up there. But I know I slapped bleed on one dude, because by that point I had already meleeed and cast at least one earthquake. So there was bleed on people. And I died. And all I can think of is all those shotgun dudes hit me at the same time, and that somehow was enough to take out my tiny health bar. So on that note, let me explain the Seismic Bleed build. This is a build every single Devastator under the sun does. It's a build with countless variations on YouTube. And I'm not smashing it in any way. It's a great build still. I think the build I came up with was a great build. And as how I intended it to be, I tried to make it as tanky for what the Bleed build does as possible too. The thing is, you cannot have health on a Seismic Bleed build and have it be good, because the vast majority of both your damage and your survivability comes from bleed, obviously. And there's only one skill node that makes it so insane and necessary, and that's blood donation in the bottom tree. And if you don't play dev or whatever, the skill node basically says 25% of your bleed damage is transferred to you as health. Now that already sounds good, but it's even more OP when you think about it, because it stacks with your skill leech healing, and it does not have a cap to the healing like skill leech does. So the more damage you do, the more you get healed, period, off it. And I think at maximum I slap bleed on just like one rifleman, and it does 20k per tick. And with that 25% combined with like the 20% at least skill leech I have on him, then yeah, that one tick heals me essentially half my health bar every tick. And then, now here's the real kicker on that build too. So I usually use my pistols strategically, especially at long range, because again, you have no health. You are frail, whether you admit it or not. And the easiest thing that takes you out is because it's meant to be in close range, but if you have a crap load of riflemen shooting you at long range and you have no means of hitting them with an earthquake or whatever that gets a bleed effect off, well then you can get taken down pretty quickly. But the thing is, 20k health, but you still have, as my build does, a lot of armor and resistance. You get the Protected by Anomaly perk. I wasn't even using Damage Absorber. It was the only build I have without that mod, because I already had almost 200k armor without Damage Absorber. And honestly, it wouldn't have made much of a difference regardless. If you're thinking that would have saved me, it would have been maybe another 5% less physical damage, and I'd have to sacrifice one of my very important mods for it. So what I put on my pistols was Weapon Leech, Status Power Skill Leech with Death Chains and Ultimate Bleed, which is essentially a virtual invincibility shooting that on one dude, because you inflict bleed, which is already enough usually to heal you. Just bleed on one dude is enough to heal you pretty much from all kinds of damage in pretty much all situations. But then I have death chains, like I said, with weapon leech, so I'm also getting even more healing that stacks on that from the weapon leech healing. And I went anomaly power, status power, cooldown reduction on all 5 pieces, and went with the 3 seismic pieces that maximized my cooldown as much as possible with earthquake. I went for impale because I was trying again to make it more a utility. I had tremor, impale, and earthquake. Tremor also another means of healing me, and impale another means of healing from the bleed with palisade to inflict it on more people. And also impale itself gives you another giant, and it is a giant health regeneration. It's basically even bigger than bleed for health regeneration on that build when you inflict it on when impale is fatal, gives you a crap load of healing. And yet somehow I died. And like I said, it is just proof to me that it is that health bar. You cannot make the Seismic Bleed build do well for damage at all. It will never compare to the damage on this build you see me using. If you use max health on all your gear, it's not possible, especially if you're going to use Earthquake, which obviously you would. The only reason you would go to the bottom tree is to use seismic skills, obviously. A lot of them slap Gravity Leap on there and use the Despair mod for the maximum amount of damage output. That's fine, but all of them, of course, still use, as anyone would, the triple Earthquake. So that has to be one of your skills, and Earthquake cannot do really good damage at all if you're not focused in Anomaly. So you go full bottom tree, full Anomaly on all your gear. You pretty much have to, as I've learned. I try to mix it up. I try to even go with a max health, like skill leech cooldown on all 5 pieces, and not even use Seismic Commander. Still try and use triple Earthquake. Still try and use the blood donation and the bleed. Let me tell you, my bleed was not. I learned the bleed didn't matter at all for my healing. I was healing off Earthquake, not bleed. And honestly, it was less tanky because then I didn't have Golem. I wasn't using Tremor effectively. I didn't have any other means of healing except the Earthquake activations. So it was doing less damage and less tanky than this build for sure and my other build. So you have to go Anomaly. And when you do, you lose all that health. And like I said, it does even more damage than this build does. And I would solo clear a minute faster this expedition, and easily solo everything constantly. I was thrown easily. I did Wellspring easily. And I've done Frontline on it multiple times easily. But somehow, some way, I suddenly die instantly. And I'm telling you, it has never, ever happened to me on any of my builds, except that one. And it is the health bar. So it is the ultimate confirmation, as I've always said, that max health is just critical. You can have as much armor, you can have as much resistance, you can have as much as the craziest, because it is the craziest, amount of health regeneration known to man in this game. And if you get cornered and you get tapped on by a lot of things at one time, which especially on a Devastator, you're doing that's what you're meant to tank. And you can't sometimes radically tank it. Some people won't care because they're like, oh well, the other 19 out of 20 times I'm fine. I clear it faster when I do, and I don't care if I die occasionally. And usually I'm with a team and he'll res me, so who cares? If that's you, fine. Again, it's a great build still. It's certainly the best dev build for DPS, I would still say. But it is the worst for 2 things, both the team utility and truly maxing your tanking. Because it just does not give you the health bar you need. My tank build here, and especially my other statue build you've seen, which is even tankier than this one, they easily now, I can see, outshine the dev build. They don't have as much health regen. Their health bar does not go up nearly as fast as theirs do. But the thing is, their health bar still goes up very fast because I improvise and use a lot of other means of healing to compensate for that. And then their max health, they have 2.5, sometimes 3 times as much health as the Anomaly build, and that is the key. Then it all synergizes well. Then when I'm frozen twice, I can survive and just get enough healing. Then 10 Breacher shotguns don't one-tap me. because it never happens on this build.